So this is the 8th year that I'm standing here, staring out onto this view. And as I hope I mentioned yesterday, it's a view and a role that I relish. In Judaism, 7 represents shalem, fullness or completion. And 8 is a number of vision. If you think about a boy has a circumcision, his brit milah, on the 8th day. Hanukkah, Sukkot, and Pesach are all 8-day holidays. And once something is shalem, filled out with purpose, we then have the vision to see what that purpose is. And I have a vision for this synagogue and for my rabbinate. And I know that I need to make that vision clear. But I want you to know that you've heard it from day one. I'm about community. I'm about creating a community that is not bound by one way of seeing Torah, tradition, or each other. And over the course of this year, I hope I have the opportunity to download my vision for Road Fit Tzedek and for our future. But before I or we can do that, we need to look back. I want to spend a few minutes reflecting upon the most significant things that Judaism has taught me and what I have seen in myself, in you, and in our tradition. As a rabbi, I get the privilege to be a part of your lives on a daily basis, whether it's through services, committee meetings, but also through baby namings, b'nai mitzvahs, weddings, conversions, funerals, Shabbat dinners, what we might call life. There is never a point in your daily life where Judaism is without guidance, nor is there ever a fork in the road where Judaism does not offer a suggested path. The tradition does not promise you will like that answer or that its answer to your question is the one you want or need. But there is always an answer there. I want to be more purposeful about what I eat. Well, here's how you keep kosher. Kashrut can be an all-encompassing guide, or simply just a little bit there. I dive into the deep end of blessings before and after you eat, being careful about how, when, and where to eat. And it can also be just a toe in the water. I want to sometimes stop eating pork. I want to keep kosher on Friday night. I'm going to take the meat off of my pizza. There is meaning to be found in both paths. Both serve as a guidepost, a stabilizing force on the path that you are carving. I need to mark an important transition in my life, put something behind me. You go to the mikveh. Going to the mikveh is the ritual and the technology that I have sought out to mark important transitions in your life. And every time I have gone with you, and before you can say anything to me, I can see that it worked. You're not a new person, but you look and feel lighter. That weight has been shed. The mikveh's warm water is not magical, but it is a fountain of spiritual and emotional potential. And I'm always willing and ready to go with you as its waters replenish your spirit. My life partner passed away, and I'm lost. You go to Minyan. That space is filled out by and with people who are in the same situation as you, except they know that you'll get through it. And they know that you think you will not, but they did, and we will be here to support you as you figure out how you will. And that place of prayer is also a space of the quiet comfort of calm. People at Minyan know not to constantly ask you how you're doing, but just to let you be. And people usually begin coming to morning Minyan after Shiva. And why? Because that is when everyone else has left. The kugels have all been eaten, and the slow trickle of guests have stopped. And that is when it becomes real, less abstract as their absence reverberates through your home. And whether it is a week or 5 months later, that is when you'll need emotional support, when most people have stopped asking you how you're doing. Minyan comes in the form of spiritual support, but really, it's just there to say, we're here for you. I want to unplug, carve out some me time. You observe Shabbat. And let me stay with Shabbat for a moment because like Kashrut, we often mistake the black and white rules we have been taught with the colors illuminating its actual teachings. What does it mean to keep Shabbat? Or what do we call someone who does not drive or work on Shabbat? Shomer Shabbat, the one who guards Shabbat. And that derives from the 10 commandments that come in Deuteronomy. And we sing it at Kiddush on Shabbat morning, Veshamru et Shabbat. We are commanded to guard or protect Shabbat. And we understand that to mean no cooking, no work, no TV, no use of money for 25 hours. Very few of us want that. And even fewer are going to choose it, which has always been the case. But the prototype actually came earlier. The first set of tablets, the first set of 10 commandments were given on Mount Sinai, and we honor that by singing it at Kiddush on Friday night. Zachor, Zecher Yetziat Mitzrayim, to remember. Now that you can do. Remember Shabbat. Honor it by making it distinct, separate, a day of rest, both spiritual and physical. And I would love if coming here were to be a part of that remembrance, but of course, it does not have to be. But you cannot remember it once this month and then 3 months from now. It just won't work as well. Honor Shabbat. Remember it by shaking a noisemaker at Naaseh. Eventually, you can do yoga with Hannah on Shabbat morning or getting a pizza and watching Netflix with your family every Friday night. And at some point, hopefully, God willing, we can return to JFK, remembering Shabbat just for Kiddush. It's okay to laugh. Thank you, Stacy. The biggest thing that I've learned, and this may be surprising, is simply the Torah. In rabbinical school, we spend most of our time studying Talmud. And studying the weekly parsha, the weekly portion, has demonstrated for me in the clearest of terms that however many thousands of years after its completion, we are still reading it, discussing, grappling, and having it inspire our lives. And that fact cannot be overlooked. But if I were to drill down a little bit, the other thing about the Torah that I've learned, which took a lot longer, is that the Torah is political. And what that means is that this space will never be free of or from political perspectives. Perhaps it once was, but we need to be crystal clear about one thing. Making this space devoid of politics is a distinctly political position. And what that actually means is that there are no politics that make us uncomfortable. No reading of the Torah that challenges our beliefs. And if that's the case, we might as well not read it. I assure you, we cannot confuse being political for being partisan. There's a comedian named Israel Campbell, who besides for being ultra-Orthodox, is also a Jew by choice. And he had the amazingly titled off-Broadway show, Circumcise Me. And he tells this joke. 2 times in the entire Torah, it says, you shall not cook a kid in its mother's milk. And what do we learn from this? We learn from this that you have to wait 6 hours between eating meat and dairy. You need to have separate dishes, glassware, silverware, sinks, dishwashers for meat and dairy. Actually, we learned that you must have a separate kitchen for meat and dairy. And he says, 36 times in the Torah, it says, you shall care for the stranger because you were once strangers in a strange land. And Jews look at that line and say, I wonder what that means. In short, the Torah has very little to say, not only about how and what to eat, but also very little about how to observe Shabbat and almost nothing about how to pray. But it has a whole lot about caring for those in difficult circumstances, about poverty and how to be righteous, both as individuals and as a community. And if that is not political, then I don't know what it is. Road Faith Tzedek will not be precisely the way you want it to be. None of us read the Torah the same way, nor will we come to the same conclusions on what being Road Faith Tzedek means, pursuers of justice, or what that requires of us. The Talmud was created for that exact reason. We all read text differently. Each of us come with different blessings and baggage. Each of us carry the memories and insights of our diverse backgrounds. That is not only as old as time, but that's built into the hardware of Judaism. And while that leads to difficulties, and believe me, it can be a burden, it's a beautiful burden to bear. My aunt, Rabbi B'nai Lappi, has always said to me that every rabbi has one sermon. And considering that at this point I've given well over 400, I push back on that idea. But if I have one sermon, one thing I've learned, one thing to teach, it is that God is to be found in community. My one sermon is preaching the theology of community. God is found in the face of the person sitting next to you, in the face of that person you used to always manage to be spreading your cream cheese next to at Kiddush, yet rarely speak to, the person who showed up to your mother's Shiva, the person you don't really know, yet they came to your book talk. If that is not sacred, if that is not divine, then I think we need to admit we are too afraid of that encounter. Encountering the divine, finding and creating the portals that ignite the divine sparks is essential in the Torah and thus to the Jewish project. And the best example of this is our namesake, Jacob. And it occurs just prior to his name being changed to Israel. It's an incredibly vulnerable moment for Jacob. As my dear friend, Rabbi Jess Minin once said, it's been a rough couple of days for Jacob. His dad is dying. His mom is scheming. Brother wants to kill him. And he leaves home for the first time, fleeing from his vengeful brother to the desert. He stops for the night to rest, and either out of a lack of experience or desperation, he finds a rock and uses that as a pillow. While asleep, he has a dream about a ladder connecting his lonely and humble existence on earth up to heaven. When he wakes up, he's finally able to see beyond his own fears, beyond the loneliness of his existence and the harshness of the desert landscape. He's blessed with a vision. And he says, indeed, God is in this place, and I did not know it. Many of you did not come to Road Faith thinking you would find God. Perhaps you are even avoiding it. But as with Moses at the burning bush or Jacob's dream, the way we experience God opens the way we experience each other opens the portal to God, and not only the other way around. This room is filled with people who opened portals to and for each other, and you can too. Rodfei Tzedek is a place where God resides, and not simply in the sanctuary because of prayer, but in the space that we carve out, the meaning we create by being here together and having the audacity to let God in through our presence. Moses might not have been the only one to see that that bush was not consumed, but he was the only one who stopped. Miracles may or may not exist here, yet the only way to find that sense of the divine is to come and to challenge yourself to come open-minded. And when you do that, embrace the unknown and seek what you did not know you needed, you will leave here feeling that God exists and I did not know it. The essential piece of our Torah readings for this holiday have to do with vision. The Lord appeared to Abraham as guests at his tent, and he saw them. When Hagar is crying, wailing over her son's imminent death, God opens her eyes and she saw the well. And the entirety of the binding of Isaac hinges on Abraham, Isaac, and God being able to see. The readings are about empowering us to see more than what is there, to be brave enough to see off in the distance where our heroes first found and saw God. We must have the vision to see what we can do, what we can accomplish, and what we can turn Rodfei into. And of course, there are aspects of Rodfei that don't work for you or might not work right now. But you got to be brave. You got to have courage. You got to see beyond that, and not by overlooking those things, but to see the potential, to possess the vision to see something bigger. We've accomplished great and beautiful, holy things in the last 7 years, and I'm sure we have grown beyond what you thought was possible. But I'm asking you not to turn away from that bush and to reach for that ladder. We can't be afraid of that growth. We can't be afraid of what lies behind what we cannot see, hidden just behind that thicket. And we all be blessed with a wonderful year, a year of health, vision, and courage. Shana Tova.